lead this hour, you know what it is. It comes from the gridiron, billed as an NFC East slobber knocker. They were really desperately trying to hype this game up because the Giants and Washington coming in 0-1, attempting to avoid the dreaded 0-2 start. Historically, in a 16-game season, if you start 0-2, it's na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na, hey, goodbye, just like that. But it's 17 games now, so who knows if that's going to be the case. But did you watch? Did you use the most valuable currency you have, your time to watch? Maybe you missed it. Maybe you didn't watch it. You had something else going on. There was some random movie somewhere you want to watch, or a baseball game or something. I don't know. But we watched, so you don't have to worry about it. I got your back. It's our good mitzvah of the day. And this game actually defied the hype. I was not expecting much at all. But we had the dramatic ebb and flow, the human drama of athletic competition. Dustin Hopkins, who? He's a kicker, an idiot kicker. He made a 43-yard field goal attempt on what was an untimed down. The most exciting play in football is the untimed down. And that was after a penalty, an ungodly penalty, had negated a miss. Hopkins had just missed a field goal attempt. The time had run out. The Giants thought for a second they had won the game, and then they had thrown some laundry on the field. So Washington ends up beating New York by 1 point. So if you bet the Giants, you won the bet on the point spread. So bad beat by me in the Thursday night game. But Dustin Hopkins, he had missed the first attempt that would have won the game, as we said, but he got a reprieve, a stay of execution, because someone named Dexter Lawrence, not a household name, he is now, was flagged for being offside. And his next attempt, good, obviously, so Washington gets the wild Mr. Toad wild ride victory. They are 1-1. The Giants go to 0-2. The better story is in the losing locker room, so that is where we're going to go first. And we will discuss the question, how embarrassing is this loss for the Giants? So on the Mather scale of humiliation, 1 to 10, with a 10 being the agony of defeat. This is a 17 on the Mather scale of humiliation. I've got malfeasance, Twilight Zone, and butcher knife. And we will tie all of these things together. Now, my first thought watching this game as it played out, it fed into the old axiom that we use on this show. Most games are lost, they're not won. And this was a textbook example of, it wasn't the team that had the ball last winning. That's another axiom which we don't believe in. This was the team that has the ball last that benefits from the final mistake will win the game. Inexcusable. Inexcusable. We all know that. Everyone knows that for the Giants. You can't lose that game. You can't. Everything was set up for New York at the end. They played above their means. Taylor Heineke threw a back-breaking, what should have been a back-breaking interception when James Bradbury came over, jumped the coverage, and set the Giants up 1st and 10, and the Washington 22-yard line with 2 minutes and 22 seconds left. So it was all set up, and Daniel Jones, he played a clean game. He actually looked like he knew what he was doing. He didn't look like a neophyte. Danny Dimes, as his sarcastic nickname is, the only area that you will nitpick, and it's a big one, not enough touchdowns. Not enough touchdowns. The Giants were matriculating the ball down the field, but you got to get touchdowns. Right? And the only time Daniel Jones seems to play well is against Washington. It's like he's got a voodoo doll that works against the Washington defense. And, the numbers were not overly amazing, but compared to how stinky Daniel Jones has been most of his brief time with the New York Giants in the NFL here, by his standard, the bar very low, this was an A performance by Daniel Jones. He averaged almost 8 yards per attempt. 7 is average. He was averaging, that's for an average quarterback, 7 yards per attempt. He was at 7.8, had 95 yards on the ground, rumbling and stumbling. And the Giants' offense was the beneficiary of several what I would classify as questionable drive-extending penalties that really stood out like a sore thumb. And yet, even with all of that, even with everything going the Giants' way for the most part, considering the expectations, they still, in the end, committed football malfeasance as the game wound down. And Joe Judge, who we are mildly fond of, we think this guy knows what he's doing, but games like this will cause us to rethink that. He is a special teams guy. That was his background with Belichick, and he worked with Saban and all those guys. And this was undisciplined football, self-inflicted wounds, 11 penalties for 81 yards. And let's be, for both teams, Washington had a bunch of penalties as well. A lot of these did not need to be called. How about let's swallow the whistle? How about that? Now, the end that was called. The big kahuna, Dexter Lawrence, there on the defensive front, practicing strategic incompetence. And he gets to wear a jumbo-sized dunce cap, the big blue walk of shame. And wow. Now, he can share it with Darius Slayton. Now, Darius Slayton, wide receiver, he had a touchdown. So you say, well, that's good for him. He also dropped a perfectly thrown 43-yard pass from Daniel Jones in the fourth quarter that, had he caught it, it might not have been the nail in the coffin, the final nail in the coffin, but it was like the next to last nail in the coffin. Hands of stone in that moment. The whole stadium, all of television watching, and he screwed up. But I keep going back for the Giants. You're too dependent on Graham Gano, and Joe Buck was going gaga for Graham. He was all excited on the broadcast about how dependable Graham Gano is, and that's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing to have a reliable kicker. It's a curse because field goals are the consolation prize for a drive. It's a consolation prize. You had 5 field goals in this game. 2 touchdowns and 5 field goals. Not a good enough ratio. Not a good enough ratio. It's staring you right between the eyes. Now, part B here. Do the Giants have a Saquon Barkley problem? And I'm nodding my head yes. Now, we are 12%, give or take, into the NFL season. Life comes at you fast. Saquon Barkley coming off a major injury, and he looks like he's stuck in the twilight zone. Like he's playing as if he is a Jag, but not a Jacksonville Jag, just a guy Jag. And he is billed as the centerpiece of the offense for the Giants and the running attack. And he has not been that guy. He's been just a guy. On this night, Barkley had 13 carries for 57 yards, which does not sound particularly bad. If you didn't see the game, if you just looked at the box score, you say, well, he averaged almost 4.5 yards per carry. The word is misleading because Saquon Barkley had a 41-yard rumble and a defensive breakdown by Washington. The burgundy and gold made a mistake. So he had 41 on 1 carry. The rest of the game, 12 carries for 16 yards. My computer-like brain tells me that's 1.3 yards and a cloud of dust every time Barkley touched the ball outside of that one long run. And this comes a week after Saquon had 10 carries for 26 yards. So 2 weeks into the season, and Barkley is playing like a bum, like an absolute bum. All right, last word here. So it's more of the same for the Giants. That's more of the same for the Giants. And they get a free pass because the Jets play in their same stadium. The Jets are always the punchline. But the Giants have quietly established themselves as a garbage franchise in recent seasons. And this is just another example. People were getting hyped up about the Giants, and this could be different. And now this is the big turnaround for Daniel Jones, and he's going to play great, and that means the Giants are going to win because the quarterback's going to play better, and the New York media machine hypes him up, and people start buying into it. They start feeding into this, and the fans get excited, get your hopes up, and then you are kicked in the nuts. And it happens year after year, right? Year after year, and in this case, the Giants decided to take the butcher knife out and put that into the balloon as pop goes the Giants balloon. Consistency, though. All you can ask for in life is consistency, and the Giants are giving you that. They're now 0-2 to start a season for the 8th time in the last 9 seasons. Only once the last 9 years has a Giant team not started 0-2. Now, meanwhile, on the Washington side of the aisle here, Taylor Heineke, he had the one big brain fart, which he was able to escape because of the generosity of the New York Giants bonehead penalty there. But overall, if Ron Rivera can bottle that performance, even with the egregious, horrific throw that Bradbury jumped the coverage and got the interception, even with that, if you can get that performance 15 times, Washington's going to win the NFC East. That was a win-the-division type quarterback performance. The numbers a little skewed at the end of all things, but still, even with that, Heineke completed almost 75% of his passes. Rock solid. Yards per attempt, slightly above average. He was 7.3. He had the gunslinger 19-yard pass into the end zone to some guy named Ricky Seals-Jones. It was a great catch. Little toe tap in the end zone there for the corner touchdown. The thing that I'm scratching my head at here when you talk about Washington is their defense. I was not impressed. I wasn't impressed with their defense against the Chargers last week. I wasn't impressed against the Giants here on Thursday Night Football. They gave up 29 points. Now, it was a lot of field goals, and you'd rather give up field goals than touchdowns. But the Giants are not a good offensive team, and they were able to move the ball around pretty good. Now, they did get some help from penalties, and that both teams had a bunch of penalties, but 391 yards, that seems like a number that's too high, doesn't it, for the Giants against the Washington defense? And yeah, that's where we are right now, at this moment. Now, it is the Ben Maller Show on Fox. We will hear from some of the key participants, and Joe Judge, the coach of the Giants, pointing out that even though the game was lost because of one player, he's not gonna play that game. He's not gonna point fingers at one player. No.
I'm not gonna put this on Dex, and I don't want to put this on Dex.
Why not?
Dex is a good player. He's a strong piece of our locker room.
Not that game.
Teammate. He's fun to coach. He's productive for us as a player. I'm not gonna put this on Dexter Lawrence.
Why not?
Okay? There's things we all have to do better as professionals. All right, but I'm not gonna put this on any one player or one situation.
If there's ever an example of when you can put a game on one player, that's it. It was an untimed down, which means if he doesn't jump off sides, the Giants end up winning the game. That is on him. I know you're not supposed to say that, and Judge would get killed if he said it, so he's got to play the game. But behind closed doors, that's what we heard, the public position. But privately, it's all on Dexter Lawrence. It's all on him at the end. The Giants win the game. It was an untimed down. All right, here is more from Joe Judge, and he is going into Bill Belichick, one of his mentors, bag of tricks here, where he talks about going to check out the videotape.
I say this all the time, and you guys kind of think I'm just giving you coach speak. Like, you come in my meeting on Monday when these guys get back, regardless what the result was tonight, the meeting's the same meeting. This is what we did positive. This is what we have to correct. This is where we're going to be going forward. This is the focus as a team. You got to keep it here. Look, I understand on the outside world, it's that kind of greatest of all time, worst of all time. It's that emotional roller coaster. Everyone wants to go ahead and it's doomsday, or you're the greatest thing in the world every week, right? That's just the nature of it. You got a week in between games. It ain't Major League Baseball. It's not the NBA. It's in the deal where you turn around next day and you just go ahead and you play. So we got to go ahead and understand the truth is on the tape. The things we have to correct, they're right there in front of us. The things we have to do better as a coaching staff to put our players in better position, they're right there on the tape. The guys we're going to use to have success, they're right there in our locker room. We got to make sure we just keep focused on what the process is to do it.
I think the Giants need to update. They're still using videotape. They got to update that. They got to. It's digital. Everything's digital now. All right, here's more. One more from Joe Judge, who was giddy, fired up, excited about his quarterback, even in a loss.
I saw him do a lot of good things. Get the ball out on time, throw some good accurate passes, throw some good balls into tight coverage. Obviously push the ball down the field. On Slayton's touchdown, he made a heads-up check right there. That was Daniel on the line right there communicating with Slay and getting him going right there. He saw something he liked, took advantage of it, and obviously produced points for us.
Whoop-de-damn-do. And it's a loss. And now the one team that Daniel Jones has had a voodoo doll against, he played well. He did his part, but a loss. A loss is a loss is a loss is a loss.